My sister's rich boyfriend spent the whole dinner mocking my clothes, my job, and the way I talk, while my husband squeezed my hand and whispered, "Don't." When the man started bragging about his latest deal, I picked up my phone. What happened next? Ended three things at once. He called my accent charming. That was the word he used. Charming. The way you'd describe a child's drawing hung on a refrigerator. Tilting his wine glass toward me across my mother's dining table, candlelight catching the red wine inside until it looked almost black, smile arranged into the specific shape of a man who has never once wondered whether the room wanted to hear from him. Very throwback, Dominic said. Rural Pennsylvania, right? You don't hear that in serious business circles anymore. My family laughed. My mother first. Patricia Harrington never missed a cue when an important man was speaking. My father gave a low chuckle, the kind that said we're on the same side here. My sister Vanessa covered her mouth with two manicured fingers, pretending embarrassment without committing to it. And my husband Mateo pressed my hand under the table. Please, he whispered, lips barely moving. Don't make a scene. 5 words. Soft enough that nobody else caught them. Sharp enough that I felt each one separately, like fingers pressing a bruise. I looked down at my plate. Asparagus arranged in a tidy green bundle beside beef so pink it almost glowed. My mother's wedding china, the crystal goblets, the heavy silverware that made every meal feel like an audition. I had been auditioning for this family my whole life. I smiled. Dominic's smile widened, satisfied. He thought I had accepted my place at the table. He had no idea he was sitting at mine. Let me tell you who I was in that room before I tell you what I did in it. My name is Sienna Harrington. I'm 29 years old. In my family, I am introduced as our practical one, a phrase my mother delivers with a soft, apologetic smile, like she's explaining a minor architectural flaw in an otherwise lovely house. Vanessa is introduced first, always. This is my youngest, luxury brand consulting, brilliant with clients. Then the pivot toward me, the dimming of wattage. And this is Sienna, our practical one. Practical, in my family's language, means safe. Beige, the woman who drives home before dessert. Vanessa arrived everywhere in perfume and silk and a bright, weaponized confidence that made rooms rearrange themselves around her. She knew designers, gallery investors, men who said emerging markets while holding champagne. She made ordering coffee look like networking. I knew payroll compliance, product architecture, bias reduction models, and how to keep my hands steady when a server crashed at 2:11 a.m. and 43 employees were depending on the fix. But to my parents, I worked in HR. HR meant filing forms, birthday cupcakes, reminding grown men not to say stupid things in meetings. The truth was something they had never thought to ask about. 5 years before that dinner, I quit a corporate job that had been slowly removing pieces of my personality like a very polite demolition. I built a company called Streamwave Solutions from our kitchen table. Old sweatpants, gas station coffee, a laptop that took 4 minutes to boot. The idea was software that helped companies hire without drowning in spreadsheets and gut feelings dressed up as leadership intuition. The first version was genuinely ugly. The dashboard loaded slowly. The color palette looked like a bank website from 2009. I cried over code I didn't understand, pitched investors who looked past me before I'd finished sitting down, and once spent an entire Friday night answering customer support emails because I was the entire support department. 47 investors said no. The 48th asked me one question no one in my family had ever thought to ask. What do you need to scale? I can still feel that room. Beige carpet, bad coffee, rain on the window behind him, my own voice shaking as I answered. Walking outside afterward and standing under the awning with my laptop against my chest, laughing and crying while taxis hissed through puddles because something had finally cracked open in the right direction. Streamwave grew quietly after that, then not so quietly. By the night Dominic Laurent sat at my mother's table, my company had 43 employees, 3 offices, over 200 corporate clients, and acquisition discussions with Apex Capital Partners that had been running for 5 months and valued us somewhere between $40 and $60 million. My family knew none of it. Mateo knew pieces. He knew I worked late. He knew I took calls with clients. He knew I had a business account and a lawyer named Evelyn who called more often than most friends. He never asked for more than that. I had told myself that was respect. That Sunday dinner was when I understood it was something else entirely. Vanessa called 3 days before to announce she was bringing someone. He's different, she said, breathless in the way she got about new things. Private equity, Wharton, international portfolios. Dad's already obsessed. I was standing in the bedroom staring at my navy dress hanging on the closet door. My laptop sat open on the bed, screen glowing with an email from Apex's acquisition team. Final team roster attached. I should have opened it then. Instead, I zipped up the same dress I'd worn for 3 Sundays in a row and drove to my parents' house like a woman walking into a room where everyone thought they knew the ending. My mother opened the door before we rang. Pearls. Important pearls. Her eyes did their scan before her smile arrived. Navy again, she said, kissing the air near my cheek. How dependable. A tiny cut wrapped in tissue paper. I'd been unwrapping those my whole life. In the living room, Vanessa rose from the sofa in cream silk that made my dress feel like office carpet. Beside her stood Dominic Laurent, handsome in a packaged way, straight white teeth, charcoal suit tailored around his ego, a tan that said either somewhere warm recently or money spent to look like it. His handshake was dry and practiced. My father entered with scotch already in hand and gave Dominic the handshake he had never once given Mateo. Firm, two-handed, the handshake of men men who recognize each other. Apex Capital, my father said, like he was tasting something excellent. Vanessa tells me you're with Apex? Among other things, Dominic said smoothly. The name moved through me like cold air under a door. Apex had kept me occupied for 5 months. I knew their managing director had a silver streak in her hair and tapped her pen 3 times before making a point. I knew their junior associate asked the sharpest questions. I had sat in their conference rooms. I had negotiated with their legal team. I did not know Dominic Laurent. I said nothing. I filed it. I watched. Dinner began with roasted squash soup. Dominic praised the texture. My mother practically glowed. He spoke in the language of men who have learned that sounding large is easier than being substantial. Leverage, optimization, strategic extraction, cross-sector positioning, words that landed impressively and meant nearly nothing. My father leaned forward. My mother refilled Dominic's wine. Vanessa laughed at his answers before they were finished. Mateo tried once. We're doing oral histories this semester, and some of my students have found incredible family stories. That's nice, my father said, already rotating back toward Dominic. Now about your acquisition pipeline. Mateo's shoulders dropped half an inch. I felt the familiar anger stir somewhere low in my chest. Then Dominic turned to me. So, Sienna, he said, with the smile of a man offering charity, tell me about your little HR world. The dining room felt suddenly colder. He explained my profession to me between bites of my mother's expensive steak. Human resources is necessary, obviously, he said, but real strategy happens above that level. Growth, capital, positioning. People are usually involved in growth, I said, a nervous laugh around the table. My mother rescued him with smooth speed. Sienna has always preferred stability. She isn't reckless. My father nodded about risk tolerance. Vanessa gave me the sympathetic smile I hated most, the one that said she forgave me for being unimpressive. Mateo stared at his plate. Dominic called my dress classic, then timeless, then refreshingly modest, each word a smaller box to put me in. He told Mateo he should leave teaching for private consulting. Same expertise, better packaging, and chuckled when Mateo said he liked teaching. Of course, passion matters, until the mortgage comes due. My fork clicked against the plate. Mateo's hand landed on my knee under the table. Not comfort, containment. Dessert came. Tiramisu in crystal dishes. My mother named the bakery before anyone had tasted it. I sat with cooling coffee and watched a man spend 2 hours using wealth as a measuring tape, and I measured the distance between who I was at that table and who I was every other hour of my life. Then came the accent. Charming, Dominic said, in a throwback kind of way. Everyone laughed. My mother, who once paid for speech coaching when I was 14 because she said I swallowed my vowels. My father, Vanessa. The whole warm-lit room agreeing, without saying it, that I was the local color at a table that had outgrown me. Mateo squeezed my hand. Don't make a scene. I looked at him. He was pale, not embarrassed for Dominic. For me. For what I might do to disrupt the polished cruelty everyone had agreed to call dinner. Something inside me went very still. Not broken. Still. Broken things scatter. Still things wait. Then Dominic leaned back with his wine glass and said the thing. Speaking of serious business, I'm in the middle of a major acquisition right now. Software company. Stream something. My pulse didn't race. It dropped. The platform's decent, he continued. Mid-tier HR tech. Ironically enough, we're planning to restructure leadership, clean up the tech stack, cut redundancies, then flip it. These founders usually don't understand the value of what they've built. They stumble into success, then people like us professionalize it. The spoon in my hand went still over the tiramisu. Stream something. My company. My mother's eyes shone with admiration. My father leaned forward, asking about timelines. 90 days, Dominic said. Fast close. People like us, founders like me. I looked around the table. My mother enchanted, my father impressed, Vanessa proud of her selection, Mateo confused. Nobody knew that the man performing a deal he had no part in was talking about the 43 employees I had hired, the 200 clients I had built, the product I had written ugly early code for in my kitchen in old sweatpants. But I knew, and for the first time all night, I smiled for myself. Dominic. My voice went through the room the way a chair scraping tile goes through a restaurant. Every head turned. Even the candles seemed to pause. Dominic blinked. Yes? What firm did you say you're with? He recovered smoothly. Apex Capital Partners. And you're leading the Streamwave acquisition? That's right. Amused now. Do you know someone there? Vanessa laughed under her breath. My mother fired a look at me that meant do not embarrass this family. Mateo shifted in his seat. I set my spoon down. The silver made one small final sound against the saucer. Something like that, I said. I opened my phone. I had organized the folders months ago. Apex due diligence, acquisition team, legal correspondence, employment disclosures. My fingers moved through them without hurrying. I found the team roster, official Apex letterhead, current date, every employee involved in the Streamwave negotiations. I turned the screen toward Dominic. That's strange, I said, because I'm the founder and CEO of Streamwave Solutions. I've been negotiating with Apex for 5 months. Your name isn't on the acquisition team. The silence was the kind that happens when something expensive breaks. Dominic's smile didn't vanish immediately. It rose first, then began cracking at the edges, the way ice cracks from the center outward before anything actually falls. My mother stared at me like I'd started speaking another language. My father's eyes dropped to the phone. Vanessa said, "What?" in barely a whisper. Mateo stopped moving entirely. I scrolled. Managing directors, legal counsel, analysts, technical review team, integration Acquisition consultants. I looked up. No, Dominic Laurent. He cleared his throat. Acquisition structures are complicated. Not everyone appears on every internal document. These aren't internal summaries, I said. These are the official team rosters sent directly to me as CEO. The flush rose through his tan. I opened the second document. Also, according to public filings, you haven't worked at Apex for 6 months. My mother's wine glass trembled. A thin red line slipped down the bowl and touched her finger. Dominic's voice changed register. Lost the velvet. You don't know what you're talking about. I turned the screen toward the whole table. Employment termination disclosure, I said. Filed after Apex removed him for cause. Misrepresenting deal involvement. Falsifying client reports. Claiming credit for acquisitions he had no role in. Vanessa made a sound I had never heard from her. Small, animal, like something had punctured. Dominic stood, chair scraping hard. That is completely out of context. What context makes fraud acceptable? I asked. Nobody laughed. The candles kept burning. The chandelier hummed. Outside, a car passed on the wet street, tires whispering over pavement. The ordinary world continued while the carefully constructed one at this table came apart by the seam. My father read the document on my phone with the concentration of a man watching his own judgment collapse. You said you were managing director, Vanessa whispered. You said you were promoted. Dominic reached for her arm. Vanessa, babe, don't. She pulled back. Don't call me that. He turned to my parents then, desperate. Mrs. Harrington, I can explain. Sienna is clearly upset. Maybe she misunderstood. I laughed. It surprised everyone, including me. I built the company you just called mid-tier, I said. I wrote the first code at my kitchen table. I survived 47 investor rejections. I know every person on that acquisition team, down to which analyst keeps granola bars in his laptop bag because due diligence meetings run long. I leaned forward. You don't get to sit in my mother's house, mock my work, mock my husband's career, mock my voice, then wear my company like a costume. Dominic looked at Matteo then. Last resort. Another man to pull him out. Matteo looked away. My mother stood. Her chair barely made a sound. She didn't need volume. Patricia Harrington had operated for 30 years on the authority of a woman who controlled the room through atmosphere alone. Get out of my house, she said. Patricia, now. He looked at Vanessa one last time. She was crying. Mascara tracking down both cheeks. Arms folded across her chest like she was trying to hold something in that had already left. He grabbed his coat, walked to the front door. It opened, closed, and in the silence after, every person at that table turned and looked at me. For 29 years, I had been invisible at that table. Now I was the only thing in the room. Nobody spoke for a long moment. My father missed his glass pouring scotch. Amber liquid pooled over his hand. He didn't notice. Vanessa stared at the empty doorway. The antique clock in the hallway ticked with the specific obscenity of sound continuing when everything else had stopped. You're the CEO? My mother said. Yes. Of Streamwave Solutions. Yes. My father looked up. Valuation? Of course. Numbers first. Pain later. If at all. Between 40 and 60 million, I said, depending on which offer we accept. The word million moved across the table like weather no one had dressed for. Why didn't you tell us? My mother asked. I looked at her carefully. There were so many answers. Because you called me practical like it was a consolation prize. Because Dad interrupted me every time I spoke about anything real. Because Vanessa's handbag received more follow-up questions than my career. Because the one time I mentioned building something of my own, you told me stability suited me, which was your way of saying ambition didn't. I gave her the cleanest true thing I had. You never asked. She flinched. Good. Some truths should land before they're softened. Matteo reached for my hand under the table. This time I moved mine away. He noticed. His face shifted. Just slightly. Just enough. Sienna, he whispered. I need air. The hallway was colder. I walked past the family photos in silver frames. Vanessa at graduation. Vanessa at charity events. Vanessa at the golf club dinner. I was in some of them technically. At the edge, half turned. A shoulder in the background. Matteo followed me to the front entry. Can we talk? I faced him under the chandelier. The same chandelier my mother had once called understated, though it was roughly the size of a small planet. You told me not to make a scene, I said. He closed his eyes. I know. A man was mocking me in front of my entire family. I panicked. You always panic here. Your family makes me feel like nothing. Something cold moved through me. And your solution was to help them do it to me? His mouth opened, then closed. The first honest thing he'd done all night. I didn't know, he said quietly, about the company. Not really. You knew enough to ask. I thought you'd tell me when you were ready. No, I said. You thought not asking meant you didn't have to know. There's a difference. His eyes went wet. That's not fair. Fair. I looked at him. I spent 4 years defending you to the people in that room. I told myself you were gentle, not weak. But tonight I understood something. You weren't just avoiding conflict. You were protecting your seat at the table. A quiet wife made your fear look like peace. A quiet wife didn't force you to choose. That's not true. Then why was your first instinct to silence me? He looked toward the dining room, then back at me. The answer was all over his face. My mother appeared at the end of the hallway, face bare in a way I'd never seen it, even with makeup still on. Sienna, please stay. I looked from her to Matteo to the dining room where the plates sat half-finished and cooling. For once, nobody was directing me. For once, they were waiting. I picked up my coat. No, I said. Where are you going? Matteo asked. I opened the front door. Cold air rushed in, smelling like wet leaves and distance. Somewhere I don't have to be small. I stepped outside alone. The whole house behind me went quiet. I drove without music. The roads were slick and black under the streetlights. My hands hands were steady on the wheel, but my chest felt hollowed out, scraped clean of everything familiar. I didn't go home. Home was where Mateo would follow, apologize, make tea, and try to convert one clear truth into a complicated conversation. I didn't have the strength to comfort him through the consequences of hurting me. I checked into a hotel downtown on my business account. Citrus cleaner and fresh flowers in the lobby. A man in a navy uniform handed me a key card, like I was anyone else. No history, no expectations, no must-use Sienna. And that almost undid me more than anything at that table. Just my name, room 1807. I stood in the elevator watching numbers climb in red light while my phone buzzed continuously. Mom, Dad, Vanessa, Mateo. Unknown number, Mateo again. I turned it face down on the hotel desk and sat on the edge of the bed in my slip and cried in the specific ugly way I never let myself cry around other people. Mouth open, one hand pressed against my stomach because grief has a body and mine had been carrying too much for too long. I cried for the girl who practiced saying water without a rural edge because her mother said people noticed. I cried for every dinner where I laughed at jokes aimed at me just to keep the evening smooth. I cried for 4 years of believing that a husband who loved me quietly in private was enough, even when he wouldn't defend me in public. Around midnight, I checked the phone. Mateo had sent 11 messages. I'm sorry. Please tell me where you are. I was wrong. I love you. We can fix this. That last one made me colder than the rain outside. He still thought this was a crack to seal, a scene to clean up. My mother's messages were shorter, building towards something. The last one said simply, I'm sorry. No decoration. No, I'm sorry you felt that way. No, I'm sorry dinner was tense. Just, I'm sorry. I looked at it for a long time and felt nothing unlock. Then at 6:12 a.m., Marcus called. Marcus Gray, my co-founder, the only person who had been in the room for every crisis, every near miss, every night we'd almost quit. He never called before 7 unless something was burning. You're trending, he said. I sat up. Someone had posted about the dinner. No video, but enough detail. Quiet CEO exposes fraud boyfriend at family dinner. It was everywhere. Dominic is already trying to spin it, Marcus said, and he's using Mateo's name. Dominic's statement wasn't official, but it was efficient. The kind of damage that doesn't need a press release. Just the right finance gossip account and a screenshot from someone close to the family. The message said the dinner had been misunderstood, that I was emotionally overwhelmed, that my husband had privately apologized for my behavior. My behavior. Mateo called before I could call him. I answered. Tell me you didn't speak to Dominic, I said. Silence. That was how I knew. He'd taken the call late at night, he said. Didn't know what Dominic wanted. Dominic was panicking. Mateo had only said things got out of control. Out of control. Another soft phrase laid over a hard fact. Did you apologize for me? I said you were under pressure. I laughed once without humor. Dominic had spent one evening mocking me. Mateo had spent 4 years asking me to absorb it. And when the truth finally cost another man something, my husband's instinct had been to soften the landing. For him, not for me. I want you out of the apartment before I come back, I said. Sienna, please. I'm not doing this. I'm recognizing what has already been done. His voice cracked. I love you. I know. But your love has always arrived after the damage, he cried. I could picture him at our kitchen table. Hair messy, hand over his face, kettle cooling untouched beside him. Once that image would have pulled me back like a tide. Let me fix it, he said. You can start by telling the truth publicly. Post that you never apologized for my behavior because I did nothing wrong. Say Dominic lied. Say you failed your wife. Use plain words. Silence. His terror of plain words. I thought so, I said, and hung up. By 9, I was in Marcus's office in yesterday's shoes and a blazer his assistant kept for emergencies. It smelled like dry cleaning and peppermint gum. Marcus slid coffee across the desk. You look like you won a war and still haven't slept. Accurate. Apex called. They're concerned about noise around the deal. Dominic created the fraud risk, not me. I told them that. And they want reassurance on leadership stability. I looked through the glass wall at our team moving through the open workspace. Claire at reception. The dev cluster around a monitor. Sunlight on the Streamwave logo we had once printed ourselves because we couldn't afford signage yet. Leadership stable. I had built stable with shaking hands at a kitchen table in sweatpants while my family called me boring. Schedule the call, I said. You sure? No, but I'm done letting other people narrate me. Before the Apex call, my phone buzzed with a text from my father. Your mother and I are coming to your office. We need to talk. The elevator doors opened beyond the glass before I could respond. My parents stepped out together, moving through my company's lobby like people who still expected rooms to rearrange for them. My mother clutched her purse in both hands. My father's jaw was set. For the first time in 29 years, I did not stand up to greet them. They looked smaller in my office than they ever had in their house. At home, they had the advantage of chandeliers, wine poured before anyone could refuse it, 30 years of careful staging that said this family has substance and taste. Here, under clean office light with my company's name on the wall behind me, they looked like visitors who had come to the wrong floor. My father noticed the logo first. His eyes stayed on it half a second too long. My mother noticed the employees, the glass conference rooms, the people doing real work in real time, and I watched her understand, piece by piece, that this was not a lucky accident or a small side project she'd been charitable about. This was 43 people. This was alive. Sit down, I said. My mother's lips parted. I had never spoken to her that way. Not rudely, not loudly, just directly. She sat. My father stayed standing. This is getting out of hand. Which part? part? The public attention, the gossip, the reputational risk. To whom? His jaw tightened. To everyone. Be specific. My mother put a hand on his sleeve. He exhaled through his nose. To the family, he said. There it was. Not my reputation, not my company, not the fact that a man had publicly slandered me and my husband had helped him soften it. The family, the old god. I have an Apex call in 20 minutes, I said. So choose carefully. Are you here as my parents or as damage control for the Harrington name? My mother's voice shook when she answered, as your parents. My father looked at the floor. I waited. Finally, he sat. We failed you. My mother didn't look away when she said it. I spent years making you feel like you were less because you didn't perform success the way I recognized it. I called you practical when I meant safe. I was proud of Vanessa for being impressive and ignored that both of you were performing for me instead of living. My father rubbed his face. He looked older than he had 48 hours ago. I misvalued my own daughter, he said quietly. I judged value for a living and I got this one completely wrong. Something in my chest ached, not opened, just ached. I believe you're sorry, I said. My mother reached for my hand. I moved mine off the desk before she reached it. Her face crumpled. But sorry doesn't reinstall me into the family system as it was, I said. I'm not coming back to Sunday dinners where a few tears erase 29 years. I'm not becoming your redemption. I'm not proof that you're better now. We don't expect that, she whispered. You do. You just don't know you do yet. My father looked at me with something I didn't recognize on his face immediately. Then I did. It was the look of a man who has been asking the wrong questions his whole life and has just noticed. What do you want? He said. Marcus lifted 2 fingers through the glass. Apex in 15. Distance, I said. Stop calling because you're uncomfortable with the consequences of your own choices. Let Vanessa find out who she is without using me as a reference point. Don't speak about me to your friends, your clubs, anyone. When you've done that long enough to mean it, I'll let you know. And Mateo? My mother asked. The name entered the room like smoke. I'm asking him to leave the apartment. My father frowned. Divorce is a serious, so is 4 years of public cowardice. Claire knocked on the glass. Apex is ready. I stood. My parents stood automatically. Reflex from a lifetime of rooms they ran. My father looked toward the conference room, then back at me. Are you going to be all right? For once, the question sounded real. Not evaluation, not doubt. Just a father. Frightened. I picked up my laptop. I already was, I said. You just didn't know. Dominic's email to Apex had gone out that morning. Subject line, formal clarification regarding false allegations. He claimed he'd consulted informally on the Streamwave deal, that I had misinterpreted casual dinner conversation, that his Apex termination was mutual and unrelated to ethics. And then, his worst move, the one that would cost him everything, he implied Streamwave's leadership might be unstable because its CEO had allowed personal family conflict to influence professional judgment. Evelyn, my attorney joining by video from New York, read it on screen with red lipstick and the expression of a woman who genuinely enjoys this part of the work. Good, she said. Marcus looked at her. Good. He put it in writing. Caroline Voss appeared on the Apex screen, silver streak, blue notebook, pen tapping 3 times before she spoke. Sienna, we received Mr. Laurent's email. I assumed. We want to be clear. Apex has no ongoing relationship with Dominic Laurent. He was terminated for cause. Then I need that in writing. Today. I also need written confirmation that he had no role, formal or informal, in the Streamwave acquisition. I need Apex to notify every recipient of his email that his statements are false. And I want a revised indemnity clause protecting Streamwave from liability related to his misrepresentations. Marcus glanced at me sideways with something close to pride. Caroline studied me through the screen. That's a significant request. So was being publicly dragged into a fraud narrative by your former employee. A faint smile. Fair. We negotiated for 43 minutes. Not begged, not reacted. Negotiated. When the call ended, Evelyn leaned toward her camera. And your husband? She knew. Good lawyers hear the unsaid. He's leaving the apartment today. Do you need a referral? Send it. That evening, I went back to the apartment with Marcus waiting downstairs. The hallway smelled like someone else's garlic dinner. My key turned smoothly in the lock. Inside, 2 suitcases stood by the door. Mateo was in the living room holding the framed photo from our courthouse wedding. Me laughing, hair blown across my face. Him looking at me like the world had reduced itself to one person. Grief hit me so hard I almost sat down on the floor. I posted, he said. I checked my phone. My wife did nothing wrong. Dominic Laurent lied. I failed to defend Sienna when she deserved it. I am ashamed of that. Thousands of likes already. Public, specific, what I'd asked for. Still late. Always late. I'll do therapy, he said. I'll stand up to your parents. I'll never ask you to be quiet again. I looked around the apartment. The chipped mug, the stack of student essays, the small basil plant dying on the windowsill because we always forgot to water it until it was nearly too late. This had been my life, not all bad. That's what made leaving harder, not less necessary. You're promising to become the husband I needed after I stopped being the wife who made your weakness comfortable, I said. He cried, quietly. I could see him trying not to. Once that would have been enough to pull me back. Do you hate me? He asked at the door. No, I said, and meant it completely. I just don't choose you anymore. The door closed. The apartment went quiet. Then Dominic's number sent a message from an unknown line. You think you won. You have no idea what I can still destroy. I screenshotted it, forwarded it to Evelyn. Blocked the number. She called in under a minute. Don't respond. I didn't. Men like Dominic rely on private shame, she said. You are no longer private. By morning, Apex had issued their statement. Apex Capital Capital Partners confirms that Dominic Laurent is not employed by the firm, has no role in any current transaction involving Streamwave Solutions, and is not authorized to represent Apex in any capacity. Clean, final, public. Dominic's consulting website disappeared by afternoon. His LinkedIn went dark. Former colleagues stopped taking his calls. A finance newsletter picked up the story and ran it under a headline that required no editorializing. By 3 o'clock, Vanessa texted me a screenshot of Dominic trying to reach her 12 times. Did you answer? I asked. No. Then, I wanted to. Not because I miss him, because I wanted to know how I was stupid enough to believe him. You weren't stupid, I wrote back. You were trained to value the packaging over the person. We both were. She didn't reply for a while. Then, I'm sorry I laughed at dinner. That apology landed differently from my parents. Less polished, less desperate to be forgiven. I typed back, I know, not I forgive you, not it's okay, because it wasn't okay, but it was honest, which was the only currency I had any use for now. 3 weeks later, the Apex terms changed. They came back stronger, but I no longer wanted to sell control. Not completely. The noise had brought attention. New customers, new investors, and something I hadn't expected. Emails from women founders who wrote at midnight saying I thought I was the only one. The platform that had started as ugly code on a kitchen table was being seen, finally, at full size. So I negotiated a growth partnership instead. Capital without surrender. Expansion without erasure. At the final meeting, Caroline Voss said, "You realize most founders would have taken the original money and walked. I spent too long being walked over," I said. "I'm not selling the company just to become a footnote in someone else's portfolio." She smiled. Then let's build. The deal closed in December. No Dominic, no family spectacle, no husband beside me for the photos. Just me and Marcus and our legal team and 43 employees cheering in the open office when I walked out with signed documents. Claire from reception popped grocery store champagne because that's what we had in the fridge. Someone played music too loud. Marcus hugged me hard enough that my ribs protested. "You did it," he said. Through the glass wall, I could see snow beginning to fall over the city. I had spent years imagining that success would feel like applause from the people who doubted me, like vindication delivered at volume. It didn't feel like that. It felt like keys in my own hand. When my mother texted, "We are so proud of you, sweetheart," I looked at the screen for a long time. "Thank you," I wrote back. Nothing more. Because pride, like love, means something different when it only arrives after proof. By January, my life was unrecognizable in quiet ways. New condo, 15 minutes from the office, high enough that traffic sounded like weather. First night there, I slept on a mattress on the floor because the furniture hadn't arrived. Takeout noodles from the carton. Snow blurring the city lights beyond the window. No one to tell me not to make trouble. No one to be disappointed by the size of my voice. The silence felt strange at first. Then it felt clean. Mateo signed the separation papers in February. We met at the coffee shop near the courthouse where we used to buy cinnamon rolls after dentist appointments because adulthood deserved small rewards. He'd grown a beard that didn't suit him. He told me he was in therapy, that he was learning how much he'd avoided. "If I'd defended you that night," he said, "would we still be married?" I watched steam rise from my cup. "No," I said. He looked startled. "That night didn't create the problem," I said. "It just let me see it." He nodded, each word landing like something he'd already suspected and hoped wasn't true. "I hope you're happy someday," he said. "I hope you become brave before someone else needs you to be." We walked out separately. The bell over the cafe door rang once for him, then once for me. In March, a national business magazine ran my profile. The headline made me laugh. "The CEO who stopped whispering." After it ran, my inbox filled again. Most of it I couldn't answer, but one email stopped me. A woman in Ohio who wrote, "My family calls me the safe one. I printed your article and put it above my desk. I read that 3 times. Then I pinned it to the corkboard in my office. Not because I needed to be a symbol, because I needed to remember that silence travels, and so does the moment it ends." 6 months after that dinner, I stood backstage at a women's leadership conference in Chicago, listening to rain on the roof of the convention center. 800 people on the other side of the curtain. Marcus handed me a paper cup of coffee. "Nervous?" he asked. "Yes." "Good. Means you're not dead." Inspiring as always. He tapped his cup against mine. "Go make a scene." The host introduced me as founder and CEO of Streamwave Solutions. She mentioned the growth partnership, the expansion, the hiring equity tools. She did not call me someone's daughter, someone's sister, someone's wife, or the quiet woman from a viral dinner. I walked into the light, set my notes on the podium, pushed them aside. "I used to think being underestimated was something that happened to me," I said. "Now I think it was also something I was trained to accept." The room went alive, quiet, listening quiet. I told them about building in silence, not the gossip version, the real one, the ugly dashboard, the 47 rejections, the nights my eyes burned, the way I mistook invisibility for safety because visibility had always come with a cost I didn't know how to stop paying. I did not name Dominic. He didn't deserve the stage. I didn't name Mateo either. Some stories belong to the person who survived them, not the people who forced the lesson. "I don't believe every insult needs an answer," I said, "but I believe every woman should know the difference between peace and self-erasure. Peace lets you breathe. Self-erasure teaches you to hold your breath so no one else feels uncomfortable." A woman in the third row wiped her eyes. My throat tightened. My voice held. I lost some things by speaking up. I lost the version of my marriage that only worked when I stayed small. I lost the version of my family that loved me best when I was easy to overlook. I paused. but I gained myself, and I will never call that a loss. The applause came slowly, then all at once, the way the best things do. That night in my hotel room, I stood by the window looking at Chicago below. Wet streets, moving headlights, the city doing what cities do without asking permission. My phone buzzed. Vanessa, saw clips from the speech. Not because you were impressive, because you were you. Then my mother. I watched online. I am learning to be proud without making it about me. I love you. I read it. Set the phone down without answering. Not every message required immediate access to me. That was freedom too. A final email from Priya, my divorce attorney. Finalized. Documents attached. I sat on the edge of the bed. No tears came. Just one long, steady breath. I thought about the navy dress, the tiramisu untouched, Dominic's face draining of color, Mateo's whisper, my mother's laughter, my father's silence. Then I thought about my name on that conference stage, my team. 43 employees who had built something real with me. The woman in Ohio who printed an article and put it above her desk. They had thought I had nothing. No power, no edges, no story worth hearing. They were wrong. I had built a company in silence. Then I built a life out loud. And this time, nobody else got to decide how much space I was allowed to take up.